Welcome to Ovarian Cancer Canada's speaker series for the month of September, which is also Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. My name is Stephanie Goslin, and I'm the Regional Director for Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and I'm happy to be your host for tonight's session. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest speaker this evening, Roy Ellis. Roy will be presenting to us tonight on living with resilience in the face of uncertainty. Roy is a therapist, an author, and a speaker who makes his home in Halifax, Nova Scotia. For 30 years, Roy has had the privilege of helping people encountering death, grief, and trauma. Roy was the bereavement coordinator with the Integrated Palliative Care Service of the Nova Scotia Health Authority for 15 years. He is also a certified spiritual care practitioner with the Canadian Association for Spiritual Care. He is a proud co-developer and co-director of Camp Kadupsi, a grief camp for kids at Brigadoon Village in the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. He is also a playwright and an author. So Roy, I wanted to sincerely thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank everyone who's present so much just for taking time out of your day, out of your week, out of the busy lives that we all live, the high pressure lives, the COVID lives, to just sit with your comrades and friends and peers for a while, just to share in a time of reflection, learning, healing, and participating in each other's lives a little. So I'm really grateful that you've come here, and thankful as well to Brittany for coordinating in the background. She's working all the dials and the knobs back there in Zoom land. And so I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm going to get right down to things. I'm hoping there'll be something for everyone here. In something like this, talk like this, some of the stuff's going to ring true for you. Some of the stuff's going to seem like, and that's kind of normal that you sort of, that you'll take what you can out of this. So I just invite you just to take whatever feels yummy and nourishing and good. And if something doesn't sound right for you, then just let that go. But I hope there's something here for everyone. I'm very excited about presenting this material. It's very meaningful material for me. I've spent a lot of time studying and learning about it and using it in my therapy practice with people. And I've taught it a lot before, so I'm excited to teach you here today and to spend time with you. My plan is to spend about an hour with you now. I'm just going to get my timer going. About an hour in presenting, and then half an hour for a conversation with you. And in the middle, there'll be some opportunities for your engagement as well. So I'm just going to jump right in. Oh, and by the way, these things here are not angel wings. It's my chair. But if you want to think of them as angel wings, I understand. First of all, I just want to be grateful. I'm acknowledging the land on which I'm speaking to you from today. This is the land of Mi'kma'ki, the traditional land of the Mi'kmaq people. And I'm really grateful to be here and to engaging further with in Canada as we really come to understand the experience of our Indigenous brothers and sisters and really begin to understand how much grief and loss and reconciliation that we need to engage in. So I'm really grateful to be here in friendship on their land and the land that we now share. You know, the kind of, oopsies, I'm trying to get rid of this thing at the top here. I've got a little, but I guess it's just going to stay there. We're going to talk today about some difficult stuff. I'm not going to really go into anything that's going to be that crazy or graphic, but for many of us, just even talking about pain, talking about diagnosis, even being on the edges of really difficult and painful realities in our lives can trigger us and can bring up our emotions and bring up our grief or scare us and make us anxious, make us want to withdraw. So I just want to invite you today to guard your hearts and to be free to move toward this material or to step back, go for a tea if you need one. If you just need to step away for a little while, then by all means do that. Share as appropriate when the time comes, share carefully, and share only what feels good for you and you are ready to share with the people in this group. And also keeping in mind that this is being recorded. And so we just want to make sure that those of you who are speaking know that other people from outside this group may be viewing your words and your emotions and your face in days to come. So we just want to make sure you feel safe. And finally, although this will be a discussion about resilience and trying to do better, I also want to really recognize that not everyone is doing better, and not everything that we present here is going to bring us the happy ending. I'm hoping that what you'll learn here is a few tools and a few understandings and a little bit about yourself in the midst of the uncertainty that is just part of life, that may in some way smooth the way forward for you, or maybe just light it a little bit. But I don't want to create too large an expectation of what's going to happen here. The challenge of meeting darkness, illness, disease, challenge, fracture, life storms is something that all the poets and all the writers have been talking about. And most recently, Dante, in his great opening line to the Divine Comedy, in the middle of the journey, I came to myself within a dark wood where the straight way was lost. So no matter who we are in this life, in our lives, we come to dark places, we get lost. The straight way that we thought, the future that we had imagined, the plans that we made, all of a sudden those can vanish, or they can shatter and fracture. And all of a sudden we feel like we don't know where we are. We can be overwhelmed with fear and sadness and concern and worry and confusion. But this is the human condition, interestingly enough. This is not, doesn't mean we've done anything wrong, or that we're off the path, some path that we should be on. This is the human experience. It's not something they really teach us in school. They don't really teach us about how to be in life as it really is. They usually teach us how to be in a life as it should be. And then life hits, real life hits, and here we are. So being afraid and being human and being alone and being scared is really the normal position of humans. That's usually in some ways where many of us spend a good part of our lives, 50-50 at the very least. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, I'm just going to talk a little bit about resilience and what I mean by when I say a resilient heart. Then we'll talk a little bit about our nervous systems, emotions, and the body. Talk a little bit about coping with loss and hardship. We're going to dive in a little bit into what trauma is, and I'm going to try and put a spin on trauma that I hope is new for you and helpful. Then we're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about co-regulation, which is relationships in action, a little bit about self-compassion and kindness, solitude, and then we're going to jump into some questions, and that's actually what I'm really excited about. All right, let's jump in. The resilient heart. What is resiliency? I love this picture because we have this idea of resiliency as being this sort of solitary undertaking. I need to be strong. I need to pull together. I need to pull in my inner resources and wrap myself with self-sufficiency and autonomy and strength and wisdom. And I need to move through this difficult time and be as strong as I can for others. And what this picture reminds us is that we're actually most resilient when we're tangled in with those we love and care about. That the roots of our lives reach down into the soil of each other. And the real resiliency is our ability to sort of rely on those roots and to dig those roots in deep into relationship so that when hardship comes, we're connected with each other. This is going to be what I move toward. I'm giving you the answer at the beginning, and then we're going to unfold why that answer is true, why it is that real resiliency is relational resiliency. There's this idea about resiliency that you may have heard about, that resiliency is our ability to bounce back. The idea that when bad things happen, like a ball, yeah, it goes down, but then it bounces back and it sort of returns to some sort of functioning state. And that sounds great. And actually of course, that's important that we bounce back. But we all know that we don't always bounce back. Things happen to us that we can't bounce back from. It'd be nice if we could bounce back from everything. But when people die, when disease happens, when tsunamis hit and destroy whole villages, we know bouncing back is it sounds a little bit weak. Doesn't seem to have any, doesn't really seem to have a backbone, the idea of just bouncing back. I prefer the idea of beginning again, that there's a way that we're built as human beings to sort of begin again in the middle of very difficult like human experiences. I want you to notice on the left here, this is my garden. This poor little pepper plant, as you can see, every single leaf has been eaten off by slugs, but it grew, it put out a beautiful little one tiny little pepper, and then it actually ripened. And I just looked at that, and that was, to me, that's resiliency, is having nothing, almost nothing at all, and still ripening and growing. And this is what we're designed for. We're actually designed for this, as is all of nature. On the right here, this is a crematorium that's in a cemetery close to where I bike by every day on my way to work. One day I went past the crematorium, and the crematorium had burned down. So I was like, well, there's a bit of a challenge. What do you do when the crematorium burns down? Well, you can't just bounce back. There's a rebuilding process that goes on. So I'm going to really talk from the perspective not of just sort of bouncing back to what was, but thinking about what do we do? How do we build anew with what we have? How do we ripen and mature with what is in us to do? It is in our natural ability, and it's in our DNA and our nervous system design to be able to survive and keep growing, even with the smallest amount of resources. Thomas Adhig, who I had a chance to study with, reminds us that grieving or losing and the losses of life is really a matter, when we grieve and when we lose, our life then is about a matter of relearning how to be in the world. It's not bouncing back to the old world. It's relearning how to live in the one that we're now in. And that's the really invitation. That's a great invitation. Of course, it's also, there's loss involved, and which is why we call it grieving, in leaving a world behind. There is grief in that. But the relearning is our challenge, the maturing into the new world that we encounter, and how we learn to move in that world anew. Beautiful quote here from Kelly McGonigal, who wrote a book, The Upside of Stress, which was basically about resiliency. How she says, look, the challenges of hardship and the stresses of hardship actually work in our favor if we understand them right. And Kelly says the resilience is not about being untouched by adversity or unruffled by difficulties. Unruffled would be a bit of an understatement when you're talking about disease processes. But rather, she says, it's about allowing a stress to awaken in you these core human strengths of courage, connection, and growth, which is what that little pepper plant did what it naturally needed to do. We're going to really concentrate on the connection part today and the growth part, but really about the connection part. We just have a small amount of time, so I'm going to focus in on the strength and the crucial aspect of connecting with each other in promoting a resilient heart. So the heart of resilience, in my understanding, is relationships. Who we are in them, how we understand them, how we connect with each other, how we engage with the difficulties of relationship as well, especially when our resources are wearing thin, when anxiety is high and frustration, when our brains are shut off and we have brain fog from chemo, or when we're struggling with our new identity, with our body, and who we are on the other side of a disease process or illness, or even recovery and survivorship. Relationships are really the core of our recovery and the core of what we really need to keep our keel in the water and to keep sailing forward. I want to say a little bit about what resiliency isn't. It's not doing it on your own, or never needing anyone, or being perfect or bulletproof, never getting burnt out from being in the world, or just avoiding every crisis. It's not some kind of masculine toughness. It's not just a cost of doing business or old school grit or some kind of a sign that you're superior. Trying to tough it out is not what resiliency is. Resiliency is way more vulnerable and tender than that. It's courageous, but in the same way that little pepper plant is courageous. It's really hard to be tough when everything's off of you and when your last leaf is just hanging on by a hair. We're going to start our talk today in an interesting and strange place. I want to talk to you about the human nervous system. And I know this sounds like, oh my goodness, are we going to have a scientific doctor talk here? Well, yeah, a little bit, because it's really helpful. And I think what I want to share with you has been incredibly helpful in me and my understanding of how the body reacts to stress. So I want to share a little bit about this with you. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about the autonomic nervous system. But before we do this, and by way of example, I just would like to invite you into a little moment of mindfulness. We're going to do a little experiment. And if you do this with me, I'd really appreciate it. Just going to ask you just for a moment, just to quiet yourself. Keep looking at the screen. Take a few just calming, cleansing, spacious breaths. And just settle a moment. I do want you to sort of keep your eyes on the screen, and I'm going to put some words on the screen. And I'm just going to ask you just to allow these words, just notice from where you're sitting and from this calm, sort of as attuned as you can get, just notice what these words, the impact that they have internally, inside of you. So we're looking at sort of chest, belly, face. How does it feel when you see these words? Here we go. Be curious to know how folks reacted, if you noticed anything about your internal world, about the first 4 words that came up, and what happened in your internal world with the last 4 words that came up. Just be curious to know if anyone's willing to share, come on and talk a little bit about what they sensed inside, or comments. Anything coming up, Stephanie?
I was just going to say, I can share, Roy.
Yeah, thank you.
For the first 4 words sitting there, I felt secure, and I felt cozy, and I felt warm, actually. My body felt warm. And then on the last ones, I felt like I could feel my shoulders tense up a little. I could feel gripping my hands, like turning into a fist almost. I could feel my body tensing.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
So there are a few comments in here as well, Roy.
Wonderful. Can we hear those?
Yeah. So we have from happiness to gloomy to doom, then power.
Thank Pauline, you so much.
Pauline, she held her breath when the last 4 words were listed.
Right. Thank you, Pauline. Yeah, and I really do appreciate if you say the name of the people who give the comments. That's really good.
And from Karen, warm and cozy on the first 4 and tense on the last 3. And a comment from Sally, the last 4 created anxiety for her.
Thank you, Sally.
Karen, the last 4 made me want to cry. And Debbie, same thing. The last 4 made me want to cry.
Yeah, me too. I actually, as I was sitting here, I had a deep sense of sadness coming through me. Wonderful. Let's just leave it there unless there's a few more that are popping in the last minute, Stephanie. We'll continue. Any more?
Yeah, we've got from Shelley, the first 4 made me feel grateful, and the last 4 causing me tension and fear.
Good. Thank you. So what did we learn from this experiment in a way? If anyone just sort of, can anyone say how to make sense of this? Of why is that? Why do we have these internal experiences just by looking at words? What is that? Anyone's going to see if anyone has anything to say there. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward.
Nothing there, Roy.
Okay, we're just going to move forward then. Thank you so much for that sharing and participating with that and your vulnerability of sharing. The reason why we have these kinds of responses is about how our autonomic nervous system works. Because you didn't really have time to really do any big thinking about those words. They shot into your eyes through your senses, and they went first and foremost into your autonomic nervous system. An autonomic nervous system just means the nervous system that you have before you're aware. It's not your consciousness. Your autonomic nervous system happens before you're aware. So it goes in and you have literally a gut reaction or a heart reaction, or sometimes a face reaction, or maybe a throat reaction. You get constricted or tense and gripped. That's your autonomic nervous system. We have 11 million bits of sensory information moving in through our senses every second. Think about that. Every second, 11 bits of information are coming in, and your nervous system is dealing with those. And of all those 11 million, between 6 and 100 go into your conscious mind. So what that means is your autonomic nervous system, this unconscious nervous system, is working always on your behalf to understand what's happening. So when you looked at those words and had a response, it was your autonomic nervous system tightening grip, racing heart, anxiety, tensing, or feeling cozy and warm. That's pure autonomic nervous system. In other words, you didn't sort of rationally go, geez, that's scary, and that word is weird. Like, it was boom, automatic. So that's what I want you just to notice right off the bat, that there was things going on inside of us that have nothing to do with our conscious awareness. They're about our autonomic nervous system and how it operates. I'm going to share with you a little bit about how it operates. On the right hand of the screen here, you see the brain, and there's this long nerve. It's called the vagus nerve. And vagus just means wanderer. It's a big, long, wandering nerve. The reason why we have these automatic responses is because when something in our nervous system, which is this little, you can think of your nervous system as the part of you that's looking for danger before you even sense it intellectually. So when you see the word lockdown, you feel it at the autonomic nervous system. It goes danger, bad, or scary, or threat, or not good, and your body tenses automatically. This is before you've even, and this is because if you think about it, this whole system is there to protect you from animals and falling and dangers and all these things. So it has to be split second, folks. So way back when, 200 million years ago, we developed this thing called the fight or flight response, which is your sympathetic nervous system, which is part of your autonomic nervous system, which is part of this long vagal nerve. And there's two ways that we approach that. Either when we're threatened, we either fight, we come toward the thing and fight. I'm angry and I'm frustrated, and what are you saying? And how could you do that? And don't touch my kid. And hey, doctor, like, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Boom, out we go. And it mobilizes all this energy to meet the threat and make the threat go away. So we're going to try and do something that's very active. Or we move into flight, which is an anxious, panicky, runaway, escape place. And we all know about that. And many of us, I'm more of an anxiety person. I start with anxiety and I sort of, I want to withdraw and I want to run away and I want to escape. And I get panicky at times. So usually we have one of these two. But the other one is called a dorsal vagal or freeze. You've all heard about fight, flight, or freeze. And the freeze is when we can't fight or flight. We are unable to do that and we realize it's hopeless and we shut down into dissociation. And we get numb, we get depressed, we shut down, we sort of like our blood, our pulse slows, our heart stops sending blood to our brain. We sort of prepare for death. And that's, many of you will know this sort of like immobility in this kind of, have you ever felt like I'm just, you're sitting on the couch all day long and you're like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to think about anything. My brain is foggy. I got nothing. So that's what's called a dorsal vagal total immobilization, freezing up and a shutting down. So that's how your autonomic nervous system works with threats. And the higher the threat, the more likely you are to, if you have an absolutely scary threat that's terminal, for instance, you might move right into full freeze, like I'm going to be fully immobilized and I don't even know how to live or move or talk or anything. Or you might just be anxious and wanting to run, or you might want to go into fight mode. So it's really important to notice that. But really the significant part here, and why I wanted to show you this, my friends, is down below in the green area called social engagement. What science has shown us in the last 20 years is that the way in which the human autonomic nervous system moves us out of these threat positions of anxiety or rage or frozen is through what's called the social engagement system. And what that simply means is when we're in relationship with others and when we talk to others, others give us that sense of safety, that sense of security, of being seen and of being soothed. And when that happens, our threat levels lower, our autonomic nervous system's calm, and then we can feel grounded and present. You know how when you're anxious, you don't ever really feel present? You're sort of, your sense of humor is gone. Your face just kind of goes flat or it gets angry. But when we're in social engagement, when we're calm and enjoying each other, we're curious, open, exploratory, compassionate, mindful of the world that we're in. And there's a calmness and a peacefulness and an ability to be better than fine. So our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, wants to calm threats, wants to escape threats, and wants to be better than fine. That's what Antonio Damasio, the neuropsychobiologist, says, that the nervous system is tuned to be better than fine. So our nervous system doesn't want to feel anxious or rageful or shut down. It actually wants to move into the social engagement system and the most important thing to know about the social engagement system is that's when we're around people who love us, who see us, who understand us, who listen to us, who make us feel safe, who make us feel secure, and who soothe our problems. So our survival physiology, as it turns out, is absolutely related to human relationship. The resilient heart is the relational heart, and a relational heart is the only thing that can drop us down out of fear, anxiety, rage, and frozenness, and deadness, and shutdownness into life and then a sense of being animated as human beings. Isn't that cool? And this happens by way of neuroception. Neuroception is a fancy word for that unconscious knowing that we have. There's perception, which is like, I see you, I hear you, it's real, my conscious mind is doing it. Neuroception is all that feeling that's going on inside. The moment you saw the word hugs and you felt good, that's neuroception. From the moment you saw the word lockdown, you felt bad, that's neuroception. Unconscious, unaware, but instantaneously present. And it happens with our inner world. We can feel safe, secure, or threatened by our internal world. Oh, I've got a pain. Like any of you who've been diagnosed with cancer will know that all of a sudden your inner world can be feeling safe, that we can actually feel that the body itself is not a safe place. Or our outer world is unsafe, a doctor's office, or going to your oncologist, or just a divorced, a really horrible divorce, or just ecological disaster can make us feel things. And then, of course, in relationships, we can be aware without even having cognitions that there's something wrong, there's some sort of rupture in our relationships. So we know what's happening in our autonomic nervous system, not by our mind, by how you feel inside. If all of a sudden your heart is racing, or you feel weak or restless, or you have sweating hands or dry mouth, or if your voice feels inhibited, that's because the vagal nerve runs through your neck, it runs through your face, it runs to your heart, it runs to your belly, and it runs through your intestines. That's why when you're anxious, if you're peeing and pooing a lot, it's because literally the whole system is pushing that through. Emotional numbness or facial stoicism, in other words, when your face goes flat, that means that something is happening with your autonomic nervous system, or you're agitated or ringing ears. Just for example, so when you feel weird in your body and you feel hyped up, or shut down, that's your autonomic nervous system talking. And the only way that it really feels better is through emotional connection, through relationship and the emotional sharing that is so crucial for human beings. However, our emotions, especially during times of threat and disease and illness and crisis, our emotions are hard. They're scary. They can make us feel, make our bodies literally feel, the sensations in our bodies can feel intolerable. However, we are really built to feel our emotions and to be comfortable in them. It takes some learning and it takes some time. But as Hilary Jacobs Hendel says, no matter how scary our emotions may sometimes seem, see if I can move this over, if we allow ourselves to proceed and metabolize them, which that just means to feel them, to let them be in our body without pushing them away, numbing them out, running into, freezing out, or just running away into fear or fighting out, to actually sit back and actually feel our feelings, which only happens usually in relationship. We have to talk to someone about how we feel. We have to share with someone with how we feel. I mean, we can acknowledge that to ourselves, but we really need to share. Then invariably, we come to a good place. Invariably, she says, we come to a good place. In order to do this, we need to be aware of our body. This is a chart of different heat centers in the body as people felt different kinds of emotions. So notice how embodied emotions are. That even as we feel emotions, the body's heat centers and the body itself is changing and is fluxing. Not only is the brain, but the body itself. So we want to be really aware of how we are skin in, how we feel, right? In the range of awareness now. So we have the autonomic nervous system, which is how you feel out of awareness, is like stuff's happening. But then the emotions are those feelings and those sensations that we are aware of. We call those feelings or emotions. Autonomic nervous system, it's just this automatic threat system. But our emotions, they're ours, they're conscious, and we feel them. So we want to really be aware also how embodied they are. We want to be attuned to how we feel. So right now, just going to ask you folks, where do you carry your stress, your pain, your hurt, your anxiety, or your deadness in your body? Whether it's through your disease process or just part of your lived experience of self, perhaps you could just take a moment now, if you have a piece of paper or just in your mind, maybe just put into the chat, if you care to, what numbers or what part of your bodies, whether you just want to say shoulders, belly, legs, where do you carry your pain? And I want to connect emotions to pain here too. You can just talk about whether it's just pain and it sort of stands alone, or also where do you carry your emotional pain? I'm happy to hear about both of those, and we'll let Stephanie, we'll take those and bring those forward. Just curious to know. I'll start by saying I carry my pain in my chest with tightness, in my neck sometimes, and I get headaches. And I also can have actually my vision can actually get a little bit fuzzy at times. And sometimes I can get some stomach pounds.
It's Steph here. I definitely carry mine in my neck and my shoulders, my pain, but my anxiety I carry in my thighs. I get restless leg in my thighs when I'm anxiety. That's where I carry mine. Right. I have a lot of answers coming in here. Roy Ellison carries hers in her chest. From Gay in her neck and her shoulders. We have from Alicia in her head and her chest. Julie as well in the neck and the shoulders. From Karen, numbers number 3 and number 25. So
right, 25.
Front and back and neck and
right.
Yeah. Great. And head gets a lot of headaches with her neck pain.
Whole neck, whole throat and neck, back and front. Thank you.
From Tracy, we have eyes, neck, shoulders, and stomach.
Right.
Shelley is chest, neck, head, and heart.
Right. Good.
From Karen, the neck and the shoulders. Jerry also is neck and shoulders.
Right.
And from Lana also the neck and the shoulders.
Right. So we are a people that literally, like, it's like we're carrying a backpack of pain. It's just neck, shoulders, and a lot of heart involvement with people too, some stomach involvement. But I would say wouldn't you say, folks, that there's a pretty consistent, that it's the action is right here. It seems like most of the action with everyone is between sort of neck and heart. That's where, like, I would say, 75% of the answers were, and there was some head and stomach involvement and some hips too, Stephanie. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And thank you all for sharing that. I think it is important as we think about our resiliency and as we try to become more aware of how our bodies are responding, to be really tuned in to what your body is saying to you, to how it's talking to you. These are not just accidental things. There's reasons why pain is held in certain places. Part of that is because the polyvagal nerve runs from face to throat to heart to belly, and then it runs to the anus as well. But there's other systems that take care of the legs and the arms and the ears and other parts of us. That's really helpful. Thanks, folks. Brene Brown, everybody's superhero. She's just the best, isn't she? Who isn't in love with Brene Brown? If you're not in love with her yet, you need to start your affair soon. She's really, really great, and has written a couple of good books. One that I really like is called Gifts of Imperfection. It's the first book of hers that I read. And for those of us who are perfectionists, it's a real nice tonic. So here's a beautiful quote from her about numbing. Most of us engage in behaviors, consciously or not, that help us to numb, to deaden. So that's that sort of polyvagal whole kind of deadening and dissociating. And as soon as you're numbing, you're sort of moving up into that mode. That numb and take the edge off vulnerability, pain, and discomfort. Addiction can be described as chronically and compulsively numbing and taking the edge off of feelings. And here's the interesting thing. We cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive ones. Now that's really fascinating, because most of us think, well, I'll just, take a drink, or, I'll just turn off this part of my emotional world, my fear, or my concerns, or my worry, or my anger. And I'll just sort of like carve that one out. I'll just sort of surgically remove that one, but it doesn't work like that. We are whole beings, and our emotional world functions as a whole. So if you numb one area, you numb the other areas out. So in other words, as we push down our pain, we also push down our joy. As we push down our fear, we also push down our ebullience and our exuberance. So we get tamped down and damped down as people when we numb our feelings. The great Canadian superhero himself, Gabor Mate, if you haven't read any of his books, he's got great books on addiction. He's got another one called When the Body Says No, about stress. He says the attempt to escape from pain is what creates more pain. Thanks for that, Gabor. The idea that the movement into anesthetizing ourselves, the move into anesthetizing ourselves is actually not anesthetizing ourselves. It's creating more pain. It's duplicating our pain. The body is built to feel, and feelings are built to make us feel better. The body wants to be better than fine. And the way it does that is through feelings. And the way feelings are best used is by sharing them, not holding them in and contemplating them like a monk, but rather sharing them with somebody. This is how I feel. And in that moment, these things called mirror neurons that we all know about, you may have heard about them, but a mother and a child, when they look at each other, they mimic each other and they learn. When the child smiles, the mother smiles. When the child's unhappy, the mother's unhappy. And then they soothe each other. The mom soothes the child begins cooing, child coos, mother coos. These are mirror neurons. This is literally how we're wired, is to actually soothe each other through interaction, not through going out into the desert on your own and toughing it out and figuring out your shit and then coming back to the world, but rather working out our anxiety and our concerns and our sadnesses and our angers and our fears and our griefs with each other. Another great quote along these lines of another hero of mine, Khalil Gibran. Many of us spend our whole lives running from feelings with the mistaken belief that you cannot bear the pain. Now here's a beautiful positive statement. Hey, you've already borne the pain. What are you talking about? You're already carrying the pain. What you haven't done is feel all you are beyond the pain. If something has happened to you, folks, you're already feeling the pain. You may want to numb it, but you're already carrying it. You're already carrying the burden. So why not actually be present in our pain as opposed to numbing it out? Be present to what you're already carrying. It's like you got the backpack on, but you're pretending you're not wearing the backpack. It doesn't make any sense from a spiritual perspective. He's saying, hey, like, feel your pain. And then once you feel your pain, you'll discover what you are beyond it. There's more. The pain is actually there to teach us something. That doesn't mean that pain is good or that we should like it. But there is another side of pain, and our feelings are there to help us to become better than fine. As well, if we block our emotions, it leads to diseases. We all know this, and this is well known now that as we block emotional stress, as we block our feelings, it actually comes out as bodily problems. So emotional problems, if they're not dealt with, lead to bodily problems. One of the things that we push down the most is loss. But loss is just a part of life. It's just a natural part of life. We're born, we live, we love, and then we die. And that's not easy. And I'm not saying that that's just a walk in the park or anything, especially if you're involved in a cancer journey. It can be a great amount of fear and terror involved in that, and rightfully so. But loss, as we stand back and get a kind of a bit of a meta picture out of it, as we look at it from a bit of a distance, we see that loss is just what life is. And our greatest minds and hearts, the greatest poets and spiritual teachers have said, hey, that life is loss. And loss is our journey. And if we can come to understand how to live with loss, we're healthier people. If we try and avoid loss all the time, we end up numbing, pushing, and becoming addicted to shopping or gym or reading or just avoidance. Grieving is really natural. It's as natural as crying when you're hurt, sleeping when you're tired, eating when you're hungry, or sneezing when your nose itches. It's just nature's way of healing a broken and hurting heart. So we really want to engage with grief. We really want to make room for our grief and for our feelings. And there's something about grief that I want to share with you. It's the idea that loss bounces back and forth when you're in loss, whether it's loss of your health during a disease process or loss of someone in your life by death, or even losing your wallet, for heaven's sakes. We move from this loss orientation when we feel horrible and hopeless and broken and life's over and what is there to live for? That's part of grief. But then we bounce over into this thing called restoration orientation, where we're like, I got this, I can do this, I have a future, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to make new friends, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to be all right. It's like strengthening a muscle. It's like we strengthen up, I got this, and then we rest. I'm sad, I don't know if I got this. I got this, I don't know if I got this. Actually, I'm really scared. No, I'm actually courageous. So you can kind of see that that's the natural flow of grief. It actually moves naturally between those two states. So if you're feeling like your job is to stay strong all the time, you're really pushing against the natural flow of grief and loss, which says sometimes we're shattered and sometimes we're whole and we're big and we're moving in our lives. And sometimes we feel broken. So allowing yourself to move and be flexible between those two states is really crucial. I hope that's helpful to you, because it's really been helpful to me and the people I work with in grief. Sadness, and I'm just gonna have to move this thing a little bit here, see if I can see. There it is. Grief promotes acceptance of what we have lost. There's a reason why we grieve. It's a natural part of our emotional architecture. And it's supposed to help us accept what we have lost, to make room for the changes, to see that we're gonna have to relearn our lives. Sadness nourishes our soul and promotes a sense of depth. If you think about it, soul and spirit, soul goes down into our depths and spirituality moves up to the heights. And we get really caught up in spirituality, I need to be up, I need to be going up, I need to think positive. but grief brings us down to our depths and our richness, where we grow. That's in the same way that a womb is a dark place of growth, so is the soul, and so are the dark places of sadness. Melancholy helps us to sort of give credence to the parts of our lives that aren't particularly nice, to actually recognize them, to say, hey, like this sucks. I don't like this. We have to be able to sort of live with that. And depression speaks of abandonment and aloneness, and signals our need and our vulnerability. Darkness is the crucible of human change. So we want to be sort of present as we can to our hard times. As well, trauma is a part of the experience of cancer, either by reliving the traumatic event and being impacted by these intense memories of the diagnosis, or flashbacks, or nightmares, and some of the ways that we feel around that, or the increased arousal that we feel sometimes when we just think, we feel on edge or easily startled. We have these moods that can be a trauma response, and just avoiding certain kinds of ideas and certain kinds of thoughts. It's a big part of the cancer journey. Can be traumatic, can be this sense of being a little bit caught in a trauma cycle, avoiding triggers, flashbacks, anxiety, fear, hyperarousal, having a hard time calming down, having a startle response, not being able to sleep, feeling like you're in a constant hovering sense of stress and depression. Those can all be signs that something in you you're having a trauma response. In other words, you're not coping well, but it's at a pretty high level. Now, I want to come back to Gabor Mate here, talk a little bit about what he says about trauma. He says it's not what happened to you. It's not your cancer diagnosis that's traumatic. It's what happened inside of you as a result of what happened. What happened in terms of your feelings and in terms of your sense of safety or threat. Trauma is a scarring that makes us less flexible and more rigid, less feeling and more defended. Peter Levine says, and this is really interesting, oopsies, got to go back there. He says, this is really fascinating. Peter Levine says, trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside of you in the absence of an empathic witness. So all of a sudden we start to see that it's not what happens to you in the trauma, it's what happens inside of you, and not just what's inside of you, but what happens inside of you if someone's not there to hold you and carry you, to see you, to make you feel safe, to make you feel seen and secure. So all of a sudden, trauma is what happens when we're alone with our pain. Deb Dana, great writer, has written some really good books. She is explaining this a little further. Trauma compromises our ability to engage with others, and by replacing patterns of connection, relationship, with patterns of protection and threat. By the way, protection means fight, flight, dissociation. So you're starting to get it? You're starting to see how this works? That we're either connected and in our social engagement circle with the people who care for us, who can see us and make us feel safe and heard, or we're in a threat system. We're in patterns of protection. And finally, Dr. Stephen Porges, who created the Polyvagal Theory, says trauma is a chronic disruption of our connectedness. How beautiful is that? Feeling somehow out of touch with the people we love and our own lives because of our diagnosis, or because of some portion of the cancer journey, or even of our fear after as we survive it. There's something about our experience of the diagnosis and our experience of cancer that actually keeps us in a constant state of not quite being able to connect with the people we love. That's what trauma is. Isn't that? That's really fascinating. So it changes from an idea of something bad happening to us to the idea that we're not supported and we're not held and we're not connected. This is what is important. So folks, in your diagnosis, cancer treatment, or recovery process, oh, I can't see this, sorry, let me just back up here. How has your diagnosis, cancer treatment, or recovery process been highly stressful or traumatic to you? Are there ways in which you've moved from a safe, connected place in your life to a time of profound lack of safety and self-protection? Would anyone like to chime in? Is there a way in which you have felt that your journey in with cancer, with diagnosis, with treatment and recovery has actually disconnected you? Or is there ways in which you have been connected can you see how these two things are connected? Just if anyone wants to chime into the comments or even come on, I would love to hear. I know it's a big question.
Roy, I'm going to comment if I can. I'm not a cancer survivor, but my dad is dealing with a terminal illness right now and is in the palliative stages. And I wrote this down here just in with sharing feelings. We have a very close relationship, and I'm finding it really difficult now that he's at this stage to be able to talk about those, because I want our time together to be positive and we can play cards or whatever. But I feel like we should be sharing more. I just can't get there because I don't want to bring him down or make him more depressed when he's thinking about this.
Right. So somehow or another, the protective function in you shuts down the relational function. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's something missing. Your heart says, I want more, but I don't know how to get it because I want to protect him.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Lovely, Stephanie. Anyone else? I would love to hear anyone chime in either by voice or video. Come on in. If you have something to say, I'd love to hear it. We have time for you here.
I unmuted. Can you hear me? It's
Gay. Yeah, we can hear you. Hi, Gay.
Yeah, I've been 6 years in remission, so it's been a long time, but I've gotten involved with my cancer by making sure I'm surrounded by a support group. So I'm very lucky. The city where I live has Gilda's Club, and so I'm a member there. And the support, they do everything virtually now, but it's a place where we can go and be with other cancer people. So the support groups, and they have fun and social things too, but information about cancer and coping. And that has always helped me. I need a constant, not every day, but a regular of being connected to them.
And what would it be like for you without that, Gay?
Yeah, I hate to think. I even think of Gilda's Club as my religion, something that you really need to support me. Yeah, if I didn't have that, I mean, now we have digital, so, you get connected through emails or something like this. So I think I've learned a lot, but I don't know. I've never thought in terms of what if I didn't have them. But that's what I've done, because my family consists of my son, and he doesn't like it when I'm sick. So he's, grown and married with his own family. So he was not going to be help. And it took me a while to realize that go and get help where you can get help. People are only capable of what they can do. So if it was too much for him to help me, then I had to seek it other places. But I do like having help from things outside of me and reading and stuff like that. Some of the books, I'm a Brene Brown fan. So that's what I do.
Yay. Thank you so much, Gay. Thanks for chiming in, and good to see you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else, we'll ask maybe one or two more people if they're willing to jump in, if anyone feels they'd like to share.
I have a couple comments in the chat box, Roy.
Yes.
I have a comment here. Sorry, from an unknown person here, but it says, absolutely, I've abandoned many of my friends since the diagnosis. And when my situation gets worse, I shut down farther. And then there's—
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that.
Collaboration with that one too. Karen says the same for her. She carries a lot of survivor guilt because several women in her support group have had recurrences and are no longer with us.
Right. Thank you so much for those sharings about the way in which the experience of cancer and survivorship can be isolating and promoting loneliness, even as we're wanting so badly to connect. But there's also a way in which we can find ourselves pulling into profound aloneness and away from the connections and the nourishing relationships that Gay was talking about. I really appreciate both of those perspectives so much, and your honesty and your sharing. I'm going to move through from here, unless there's something, Stephanie, that looks really burning.
I just had two more comments.
Thank you. Please.
that this is from Shelley. There have been a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes the support and caring is almost overwhelming, and other times I feel alone. I am definitely more connected to my own self, and self-care has become a key priority for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's from Karen?
That's from Karen, yes.
Thank you, Karen. Was there anything else?
I have one from Shona.
Shona.
I have cried every day since my diagnosis. I'm scared for myself, my children, and my grandchildren. And a final thought from Sally.
Yes.
I have found telling everyone, not hiding my diagnosis, is very helpful.
Right, right. Coming out of that hiddenness and that sort of cloak, of even shame or what will people think, which can also just be, or trying to protect people, or they're not wanting to burden people. This can be a big piece of it. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I'm going to move forward here with just a few more slides before we finish up and move into some conversation, which I look forward to. So Diana Fascia, who I've studied with as well, who is a wonderful person, says that, you know, we suffer that in isolation, we sort of have a double edge of harm. We isolate ourselves, usually protect others and protect ourselves. So we can be alone with ourselves when we're isolated, but we're also alone while we're with other people. And that's the worst part of trauma, is the aloneness, which comes back to this idea that trauma is chronic disconnection, and aloneness is the disease or is the illness that follows disconnection. And aloneness is excruciating, and it's corrosive, and it's toxic for the human being, because we're built for relationship. We're built for the goodness of sharing and co-miserating, sharing our misery. And also, more importantly, this is really beautiful. Diana Fascia says, hey, it takes more than one mind to bear a difficult experience. In other words, it'd be nice if we could bear our problems on our own, but we're not built like that. We're actually built literally in our nervous system to engage another brain and another heart, right brain to right brain, in our problems. And that's actually how human beings work through their problems, not through figuring it out on their own. Not to say that there's nothing wrong with that, but that won't actually heal us. We have to share. We have to bear our problems with more than one person. The good news here is that the traumas that are coming toward us, there's something called embedded trauma when it gets right in us and embeds, and there's something called potential trauma. What we've learned from research is that when we're around people, potential traumas don't turn into traumas, they heal. But if people aren't around, potential traumas become embedded traumas. They make their home in us. So it's not what happens, but who is with us before it happened, while it's happened, and here after it's happened. All 3 points are significant for healing. We need people around us to hold us, to make us feel safe, secure, seen, and soothed. Safe, secure, seen, and soothed. Those 4 are the hallmarks of safety. Safety is the treatment, says Porges. Stephen Porges says that basically, if you feel safe, you're healing. If you're not feeling safe, you ain't healing. I'm talking about emotionally here. Well, the emotional challenges and impacts of fear and diagnosis, or someone earlier said they'd been crying every day. That's probably grief, fear, sadness, confusion. Safety is what makes us heal. That's not going to make all that stuff just go away. But in order for us to heal, we need to feel safe. And we feel safe around other people who love us and who care for us and who watch out for us. There's this thing called co-regulation, which happens automatically. It's part of our autonomic nervous system. It's part of the automatic system that we have, which is when we're around people who love us, we just automatically get in sync, usually in a beautiful way. Now look at this beautiful picture. You can see what's going on here. These people aren't in the middle of a big, deep intellectual conversation about grief, are they? This is just 2 people holding each other. This is called co-regulation, where we get close to each other, and in proximity and in the act of care and love, we automatically calm down into a place of safety. Co-regulation says something from the online. Jennifer Nurek says, co-regulation is where one nervous system calms another. It happens when you have a caregiver who is attuned to you as a child. They can use their body, the tone and pitch of their voice, and their breath to anchor safety for you as a child and calm you down. This is also true for us as adults. Very, very true for us as adults. Just going to move up here. So we're about tuning into each other. The ability for us to be attuned rests on our capacity to accurately sense someone else's state and communicate non-verbally. The most important thing about feeling safe isn't about the conversation. It's the non-verbal. It's like being able to be with someone and I feel safe around you and I feel seen. You don't have to say a word. In palliative care, I watched people who, people with cancer who no longer could communicate, just staring up at their loved one in a huge sense of safety and love with no words spoken. It's our felt understanding of what it's like to be with each other. And this is what I really want to share with you folks. It's about being in the room with each other, being in the space with each other and feeling that safety of the in-between. What's happening between you and them in that shared space. That's where safety lives. I'm just going to fast forward to here. So we need to reach out and we need to be people reach out to us. Thomas Merton, the monk and ascetic who lived and I think died in the 80s or possibly the 70s. He said, love is our true destiny. We do not find the meaning of life by ourselves alone. We find it with others. And then Shannon Alder says, one of the most important things you can do on this earth is to let people know they are not alone. Our job here is to reach out to those who are alone. And when we're alone, to reach others. Otherwise, we suffer in aloneness. How can we do this? Practically. Long hugs. Long hugs. 20 seconds or more is what makes your nervous system tune in. So your nervous system doesn't know. If you do the old pat on the back and move on, your nervous system won't know you're safe. Hold it for 20 seconds. Do an experiment with someone you love. Kids, friends, just say, I need a hug today. And could we hold it for like more than 20 seconds? You're gonna have to do this with someone you trust, by the way, not like a stranger in the supermarket. But hold that hug for 20 seconds and feel your nervous system go, because this is like how we're wired. Long hugs are a really great way to promote that sense of safety and security inside of us. As well, rupture and repair, when we're in communication with each other, that we have to recognize that if we hurt each other's feelings, it's important to immediately move into a repair mode. The research says that kids and mothers spend 1/3 of their time in relationship, 1/3 of their time in rupture, and 1/3 of their time in repair. What most of us don't do is the repair part, which means saying, I care about you, I love you, and I'm sorry that something's happening. What can we do to be okay together? That promotes safety, right? That promotes a relational security. So we really need to work on our repairing skills. A lot of us don't ever work that. We're like, I love you, there's a rupture, now I'm gonna stand back, I'm just gonna wait a little while, and then we're gonna get back to it. I'm gonna skip past here. The self-hug is another way of really caring for self. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but when you are alone, caring for yourself by emotionally, literally feeling your hands here. This is, again, this if you do this for like 30 seconds and sort of just think loving, friendly, and warm thoughts toward yourself, that too can trigger our nervous system to go into a safe mode. It can help with our anxiety, it can help with worry and shattered nerves. The idea of that we sort of are caring for ourselves and being kind to ourselves and moving into a better sense and a warmer sense of how we treat ourselves. I'm just going to skip here. The hand on the heart is another way of connecting with self when we are feeling in a threat stage, when you're feeling anxious or you're feeling angry or you're feeling dissociated. Put your hand on your heart and then just put your attention in and feel. This is about connecting, feeling that you're alive, that you're hurting, that you care. And then if you want to do something really crazy, just do this with your partner. Put your hands on each of your heart and actually spend a moment just really feeling the warmth and the care as you connect heart to heart. These are just some exercises that promote a resilient heart and a resilient relational connection with self and others. And sometimes we have to do these things. When I'm in therapy with people and they're anxious and they're upset, I ask them to put their hand in their heart and just hold for a minute. And we just hold space. And in doing that, I'll put my hand on my heart. And doing that, we're just recognizing that there's a lot of pain and fear and emotion, and that we're sharing and connecting and seeing it in each other. A moment of self-compassion like this can change your entire day. A string of such moments can change the course of your life. These small moments of self-compassion and warmth toward ourselves are not insignificant. 1 degree shift every day, and in a year, you've changed 365 degrees. You've turned all the way around. I'm just gonna fast forward here to just a little bit about a meditation, the idea of sort of calming into a mindful state and being quiet, taking a moment just to sort of like connect with self. Real meditation is not a retreat. It's not some sort of practice. You don't have to be a Buddhist. It's just attending to what needs attending to. It's putting your thoughts and your heart and your attention on you, or on the relationship that you're in, or in the space between the relationship. That's what meditation is. It's when you're attuning to each other and attuning to what you feel inside, whether it's your threat coming online or whether it's your emotions. It's just listening and attending. One easy way of doing that is called the stop technique. Just stop, take a slow, deep breath, observe your physical sensations, your thoughts, your emotions, and when you finish that, proceed with the one thing focused. Okay, I'm gonna move ahead and finish up here. When we do these things, folks, when we engage relationally, when we connect with each other, we move in what's called an open-hearted state. Richard Swartz, who created a really beautiful therapeutic process, which I study, he says, when we do these things, when we connect to each other, when we calm down, then we become calm, we become curious, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, clear. And this is that better than fine state that we're all seeking. I'm just going to move ahead now, finish up there. We've done a lot of sharing. I've gone a little over time, so I want to stop there. Thank you so much for your attention. And I mean, we did get to chat a little bit in the middle, so we'll count that as part of our chat. But now let's spend some time chatting. Any questions or comments or ideas or disagreements or excitements? Really, let's just open up the floor now. Really love to hear from you. And please put your video on if you feel comfortable, or at least your sound, or feel free just to put your thoughts and your comments.
Roy, can I ask you, do you mind to stop sharing your screen? That way we'll be able to see everybody.
Yay.
Perfect.
My pleasure. I know we kind of whipped through that really quick and dirty, but thanks for hanging in.
I have a question. This one keeps kind of popping up. Whenever you have, you know, I've been a long time since I finished treatment, but whenever you have another follow-up appointment or those kind of things where you have, the go-to emotion is to be worried. Now I have to go for the follow-up, so are they going to find anything? And I've had cancer twice and 2 heart surgeries. So it is like a constant thing, you know, as you get older, health stuff. It maybe the exercise that you had about putting my hand on my heart might help, but you're trying to get away from, it's over my head, the appointment's in 2 weeks from now, and I have to, you know, I'm trying not to worry from now until then. And even sometimes when mostly I know inside it's probably going to be okay because I'm feeling okay, but it still is that thing on the inside that worrying about follow-ups and appointments and that kind of thing.
And of course, is very natural that your autonomic nervous system would say, danger, danger, you could be, something bad can be coming. So it's normal to feel the fear. It's normal to feel the anxiousness. It's normal to be concerned. But what we know, and what I've tried to sort of explain today, is that in moments like this, that the antidote is people. The antidote is engaging with people who will help you to calm and feel safe. And that's not going to make all of that magically disappear, but we will be able to, as you said, like sort of feel more attuned to our hearts, and maybe we'll find a way of being more okay, not completely, but more okay. And it's certainly worth a shot, isn't it? Thank you, Gay.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
I have a great question here from Karen.
Okay.
Most of us have isolated, I'm guessing, since March of 2020 with compromised immune systems. Can on-screen and phone calls do the same as a long hug?
I'm leaving now. I would love to hear from you folks about that. I mean, I'm no more of an expert on that one than any of you. We've all been on this freaking screen, right, for 2 years, and I've been on it more than I ever because of things like this. I'm curious what folks think and how folks feel about this sort of virtual love and the virtual care. And even in an environment like this, is there something that's worthy here? Is there something about this? You know, I think about letter writing in a way, you know, like, do you remember like letter writing? And when a letter would come from the person, like when you did love letters, and a letter would come and it would literally bathe you in good feelings and connection. So, I mean, we're sort of built human beings for sort of the ability to connect from afar. I think this is part of the skill that we've built. However, we are living in funny times. So I'd like to hear from people about that. Can people chime in about what they think about virtual care? Is there ways in which you have been helped or harmed or neutral about this kind of
Yes.
connections?
Yes, this is Sally.
Hi, Sally.
I live in Canada and my sister is in the UK, and I get enormous support and comfort from her by using FaceTime. It's been absolutely invaluable because I can't go and see her, and it's been wonderful. It's almost as good as seeing her, you know.
Yeah.
It's much better than a telephone.
How often do you do it, Sally? How often do you connect?
Oh, once a week, maybe twice a week if something's happening.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, and how often when you're on, how long will you chat?
Oh, we often chat for an hour or more.
Mhm. Right, so you're really filling up the kind of picture of love there, right? You're really pouring a lot
Absolutely.
in.
And
Yeah.
yes, and we've actually sort of started talking about how we're feeling too, which we've never done before.
Talking about how you feel about each other.
Yes, yes.
Can you say a little bit about that? Could you share a little bit about two things? How that came about, whether it was kind of uncomfortable, and now that you're doing it, how's that going?
It was very uncomfortable. I mean, we don't in the UK, we sort of didn't talk about feelings, you know, and how much you love each other.
Right.
But because of the cancer, my sister started, she was really worried. She said she was incredibly surprised how upset she was when I was diagnosed. And I was really surprised that she was so upset. And so she sort of said, you know, Sally, I never realized how much I love you. And I was absolutely flummoxed. We've never sort of talked like this before.
Wow.
But it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. And since then, we talked a lot, and she's been very helpful and given me all sorts of things to read and poems and poetry, and it's been wonderful. Yeah. And we would never have done it without FaceTime.
Right. And without cancer.
And without cancer.
Isn't that nuts? No, there's something about if you'd ever would have professed your deep love for each other if it hadn't been for cancer.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Thank you, Sally. Thank you so much, Sally. Anyone else like to? I know Allison had her hand up earlier and then she took it down. If you'd like to come in, Allison, there's room for you here.
Yeah, sure. My question was just, I mean, the importance of the social connection is resonating with me. And I'm just wondering what you would advise for people who are in a place where they're just feeling really withdrawn, or maybe they're feeling very sick or exhausted and they're just not up for reaching out and building social connections. I mean, I know you talked a little bit about self-soothing, but I feel, you know, so much emphasis has been put on social connection. And I've never had cancer myself, but I would imagine the fear and maybe feelings of anger or sadness or just feeling really sick and exhausted would, I'm guessing, you know, some people would be withdrawn.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for your question, Allison. And just go ahead and stay on with us here. You don't have to boogie off. Yeah, there's no doubt that as we were talking about earlier, there's exhaustion and fatigue. And also, as we were saying earlier, when we feel threatened and when we feel our life is threatened, our autonomic nervous system is going to come on full tilt. When our autonomic nervous system comes on and we feel anxious or angry or frozen, dissociated, that turns off our connection pattern. It turns it off. Like, it's like, if a lion is running at you across a field, you don't stop and go, hey, honey, like, there's a lion coming over here, and I love you, and then, you're amazing to me, but this lion, look at this lion. You don't do that. You like deal with the lion. So it turns off our relational mechanisms. And that's so we can be safe, so we can put our energies into being safe. So a cancer diagnosis is going to do exactly that, which is going to put people into a period of anxiety or anger or fatigue, dissociation, and just kind of like turned off. And those people are going to need help. They're going to need the people around them to step in and surround them with love. Because sometimes people who are hurting and who are sick, that's the whole point, is that the community moves in. Sometimes they say, no, I don't want you. That can be part of the arousal response. The part of the threat response can be
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about. Yeah.
That's exactly right. There can be. And of course, we're not all superheroes. We're not gods. We can't force people to accept our love and our care. But I think there is something about persistence that is really important for those of us who are caregivers, to be persistent and to keep knocking, but also to give people space. Sometimes these stages don't last forever. People just say, oh, look, I need time alone. I need to pull in. But if anyone else, I see some comments there. Do you see anything there, Stephanie, that might speak to this as well, for what Allison has asked?
Thanks,
I do actually. There's a comment here, and it's the irony of some of my social connections is that I often find myself having to make other people feel better because they can't cope with me having cancer. Some I've had to limit my contact because it brings me down. Absolutely.
Sorry, who is that?
It just says Elle's iPad.
Elle's iPad. Thanks, Elle's iPad. Yeah. With grief and with illness, we find that people very often speak to us to calm their own anxieties. It's their own, they're looking to us like, you're strong. This is the classic one in grief, a grieving widow or a grieving person, and they talk to their friends, and their friends go, I don't know how you're doing this. You're so strong, which is just like saying, be strong and don't look sad, because if you're sad, I'll be anxious and upset. So that's a way of projecting your anxiety onto the other person, as opposed to saying, I'm really freaked out to see you so sad. And I don't know what to do about it. I'm just so sad and helpless to see you so sad and helpless. We don't say things like that in our culture, and we don't know how to do that. So it is sad that sometimes sick people and grieving people have to teach their communities of love how to love them. That blows, but it's very often the case. So thank you for that comment. And I see Shelley has got the hand raised.
Hi, I was just going to say, around the like the virtual world that we're living in, I think for me, I don't think a hug can be replaced by that. But one thing that for me was kind of a relief in that, because during my treatment, I had and probably other women do too, but really low white blood cell count.
Right.
So my doctor was almost like asking me not even to hug my kids or my husband, but certainly to not be in any gatherings. Like, she really, really. So with COVID, I mean, that made it a lot easier. I think, like, I didn't have to decline invitations, or I didn't have to go. I can remember I got diagnosed in 2019, so just before COVID. And I can remember going to a Christmas party and that feeling of, should I be here? But not wanting to miss out, because it is important to socialize when you can. So anyway, I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but in a way it was a blessing for me that we moved to a virtual world, because I was able to keep connected
Right.
to people. You can kind of control virtual world too, like, oh, you know what, I'm buffering, or
Right.
you know what I think,
I'm
somebody's
losing
at the
you.
door, like if you're getting tired, or just you're getting in one of those conversations where you're almost like propping up somebody else. So in a way, it's been I think maybe a good time to have been going through such an intensive treatment, a time when people weren't really out socializing and things. So I didn't feel like I was missing out, and I didn't feel like I was disappointing people by not being able to go. And, if you don't show up to something, then everybody assumes it's because you're homesick or depressed or something. So in a way, maybe, I don't know if that's escapism, but I found it did make it a bit easier. And the other thing I really appreciated was that I got to talk to my doctors quite a bit online. Like, in a way, I think I probably had some better conversations with them than I would have had I been going into clinic. So, still not a replacement for face-to-face, but those were sort of maybe some silver linings for me. And I was able to work because everybody was working from home, and I didn't have to worry about, not having hair or looking terrible, or, having bags under my eyes. So those were sort of some of the, yeah, that's right. I could wear my yoga pants. And anyway, those were just, it's still, lots, like I said in my comment, lots of ups and downs, but those were some of the maybe more things that did work for me.
Thank you so much, Shelley,
Thank
for those
you.
comments. No, thank you so much for those comments. And yeah, I think there's no doubt that there was, for many people, some real bonuses to being virtual, around things like seeing doctors more quickly, faster, and especially I love your comment about not having to socially engage and still being able to see people. So it's nice to hear those silver linings. Stephanie, I know we're at time. I'm willing to go a little longer if folks need to, but I hand that over to you at this time.
Thanks, Roy. We're happy to stay on for a few more minutes if anybody else would like to share.
Yeah, no problem.
I had one other question, Roy, from Debbie in the chat. What can we do to stop numbing our feelings so we can get back to feeling more joy?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you, Debbie. Well, I'm going to actually turn this one over also as well. I just would like to hear do you have some thoughts on how you've helped yourself to stop numbing? We've got this beautiful group of wise women here. Can we just draw from a little bit of that wisdom and see in the comments, what are the ways that you have moved into more aliveness from a place of deadness? What's helped you? Anyone, just drop it into the comments and we'll see what Stephanie sees there. While that's happening, I guess I'll just answer from my perspective here is that first of all, deadness is not the end of the world. We need and have to have the rests of deadness. Not all of these threat responses are bad. We do need to actually at times withdraw and conserve our energies, especially if we're really, really sick. Periods of numbness and deadness and feeling flat and unalive, those can be that's a way of, if you think about it, conserving energy. It's energy conservation. So I don't want to make it into a really super negative thing. We just have to be conscious of when our deadness is about conservation and when our deadness is about emotional avoidance, right? Or our avoidance of a trigger or a reality. Hey, look at Stephanie, you just got very bright all of a sudden. And so, yeah, so I really want to first just acknowledge that it's not the end of the world to be feeling dead or flat. But if we're avoiding things, then there are some things that we can do to move back in. And I would say engaging with people and reaching out with people would be one, but I think there's some things showing up in the chats now.
Yeah, there's some very common themes actually sorry, I'm just going to scroll down here. From Allison, spending time in nature.
Yes.
From Karen, going for walks, taking photos of nature, being grateful for sunrises and sunsets, finding the beauty in the small things. And that totally relates to me. I know if I'm having a day, if I can just go outside, it's like, everything just for a minute, it's just like,
yeah.
Taking a walk in nature. A lot of the same theme here.
Beautiful.
I love being in the moment. I very rarely think too much about the future or the past. I cherish every day. I do avoid thinking about where this disease will take me.
Right. So I really appreciate, of course. So today I really concentrated on relational connections because that's just what I wanted to focus on. I didn't want to focus on anything, but there's a whole other side of this sort of self-care and walking with nature, being in the moment. Yoga, exercise, good food, attending to the dishes. I think doing one thing at a time is really powerful. Just try doing the dishes and just focusing on the dishes, actually on stroking a plate, turning it over, stroking the other side. Just be present when you cook, when you vacuum. Just see what it's like to be in a moment. Whoever said that earlier, I don't know if that was, who said something about I love being in the moment. I really appreciated that. Someone said that anyways, was really beautiful. And I think that can be a big cure, as well as we've been talking about today, reaching out to those people who love you and connecting with them and seeing what blossoms inside and what ripens inside as you dare to step into the relational frame of our lives. I think that's lots of good answers.
Roy, there's one really good question in here from Pauline. So if we can make this our final question, I'd like to throw it out there. Now I understand why I get so irritated when friends tell me how well I seem to be doing and how positive I am. It is as if they don't want to find out how I'm really doing or give me the time to share. What should I do to have a more profound conversation with people when that happens?
Oh, yay. Okay, so this is a trust question. This is about trust, and I really appreciate this question. It's a beautiful question, and it's very complicated and it's nuanced. So the reason why you're absolutely right when people say stuff like that, you're strong, you're doing great, you look wonderful, man, way to go. You know, it is in some ways it blocks and it shields us from our vulnerability, our ability to say something like, I'm actually like not really doing very well, and some days I feel lonely and I fear, and I also feel sort of like floating a little bit in my own life. I don't feel very well supported. Let's just say some of those things are in the backdrop. Well, you're only going to say something like that to someone you trust, and building trust can be tricky. So there's two things. If it is someone who you actually trust, they may be protecting you and you may be protecting them, and it could be this sort of kind of mutual self-protection, protecting each other. So sometimes if it is a person you trust, I try something like this. I really appreciate you telling me that. I mean, it means a lot to me, but there's something else I want you to know because I love you and I care about you. Some days things aren't so good for me, and it's really good on those days too to share. And I'd like to be able to share that with you when I'm having a tough day. Is that okay? So that would be the kind of thing you might say from a position of trust. If you're not in a position of trust, then you're going to try something a little bit lighter. What might be something like this? Well, thanks. I am doing pretty good, but I have some days when this is really difficult. There's some days when I don't feel so strong. And just to test the water. So in a moment like that, you'll either find out whether they're tuning in and they want to go there with you, or whether they tune you out. And so maybe if they tune in, then you step a little further next time and you build the trust as you go. So those are the two approaches that I would take, but it's all about trust. We can't say stuff like that until we trust someone, because we don't want to end up doing more work, right? We actually want support. So those are my thoughts. great questions and wonderful. I know we're finishing this, so I just want to thank each of you for giving me some time for listening attentively to a person you don't know and had no reason to listen to. It really means a lot to me to share this time with you. And I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity.
And Roy, I just wanted to jump in, and I'm sure I speak for everyone on the call tonight. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your expertise, your time. So valuable for us to be able to open up and discuss with each other, and really learn from each other. So thank you for sharing with us tonight.
My pleasure.